All right, for today's video review, you're going to start taking a look at our next two components of the Studio Series 86 Devastator here. This is Studio Series Long Haul and Hook, who are being sold as a commander class, which is just like a box set that includes both of these guys. They're basically Voyagers, and then they also come with all the bits to actually make Devastator in the way that they're deciding to do the combined mode in this particular set, because this is really the biggest way in which these guys deviate from the Combiner Wars Devastator set, because like Long Haul is completely different and the actual combined bits are different than how it worked. Well, mostly actually the chest plate and the arms are pretty similar to how it worked in the Combiner Wars, but the legs, like the upper legs, instead of being part of Long Haul, are now their own little section here, which can be towed by Long Haul, which, you know, works well enough. Guess they might as well make him a long flatbed, because clearly he's not a dump truck anymore, because there's no space back here. But, you know, like I always do with these videos, I'm going to separate it into two videos, and we'll talk about all that stuff in the long haul video, because they're kind of, you know, it kind of gets packaged with him. And we're just going to be taking a look at Hook today, who's a little bit more simple. So we'll just take this stuff and put it off to the side and just be taking a look at Hook himself here, who so far is the one that is by far, I think, the closest to his Combiner Wars counterpart. Like, it's really very, very similar, just a couple differences. I mean, obviously, it's not at all the same mold or anything, but the transformation is virtually the same. The, you know, combination to combine mode is, it's got kind of a different joint setup, but for the most part, it's the same. Even most of the connections that he makes to the other guys are the same. He does come with his little gun here, which can just be stored on the side by tabbing it onto this little peg right here and just store on the crane itself, which cool. Unlike the Combiner Wars version, the crane does have an actual extension bit there, although I am not sure why it's that short. I feel like it would not have been that difficult to make that like twice as long, but you know, whatever. Maybe it just, I guess, didn't fit into the budget to like have that much more plastic. I don't know. Seems a little bit silly to me. Like, I don't think mine's just like stuck or anything. It only goes out that far, which honestly is a kind of a shame, but whatever. And then the little bit over here can hinge up and down. The crane arm itself is just actually pegged in, which is sometimes annoying, because when you turn it around, it actually does, like, you know, like unseat itself from that hole every once in a while. So you can rotate the crane, you can't rotate this whole section, but other than that, he rolls decently well. He's, again, pretty similar to the Combiner Wars version. He's got the big chunk here, which is obviously going to be Devastator's head hanging out in the middle. But yeah, you know, it works as a little crane truck. Like, I've got no real issues aside from I just feel like the crane could have been longer. It just feels like, you know, you cheaped out on like that amount of plastic. Just that seems like it would be the only issue here, because it's not like this transforms in any way. But yeah, you know, that's the vehicle mode there. I don't always, you know, love the just pegging weapons onto the side, but with these guys, that's kind of how all of their guns work, so I'm happy to just kind of leave them off to the side and use the combined bits as guns, just like I did with the Unite Warriors version. But yeah, it's a decent little crane truck mode here. Definitely very accurate to the G1 toy. In terms of comparisons in this mode, I've got Long Haul kind of peeking in the corner there. Here he is with Sideswipe, just for the standard size comparison. Again, you know, just implied size of the canopy there, a little bit small compared to him. Again, like this set, the reason that I'm kind of sticking with my Unite Warriors version as my definitive Devastator is just because the scale is so much better. I like, in my opinion anyway, I like them being bigger. I understand why they went with this scale, but I'd be so much more into this set if these guys were all just like one size class up, so they're all kind of like Voyager height rather than all being deluxe height for the most part, or kind of big-ish deluxe height. Like, if they were just these guys with this engineering, the size of the Combiner Wars version, that would be awesome. But yeah, no, they're a little scaled down for my liking, but that's what they look like together. It's not terrible. It's just, you know, I feel like this would be somewhat of a larger vehicle just by the canopy there alone. But Here he is with Combiner Wars Hook, who again, this is really more of the scale that I, would like. And even him is like, if you put him next to Sideswipe, you'd kind of think that he should be a little bit bigger just by the canopy there. But, it's a little bit, you can deal with it a little bit more. And yeah, they're pretty comparable. Like I said, this one doesn't have any extension at all on the crane, so I guess he's better in that regard. I do think, and I've said this before, I like the colors better on the Studio Series version than the Combiner Wars version. It's just a little bit more cartoon accurate, but I just like the size better on these guys. But yeah, that's what the two of them look like together. And then here he is with our other Studio Series 86 Constructicons. I guess we will bring Long Haul back on here just so we can see all of them. Oh, we'll leave this stuff off to the side. And yeah, they're shaping up to look pretty good. We're 4 down, 2 to go. And we pretty much know what we're getting in terms of Mixmaster and Scavenger. So yeah, they're looking pretty good so far. Again, I just wish they were all a little bit bigger, but that's what they look like together. To get onto transformation, again, if you have the Combiner Wars version or the Unite Warriors version, it's going to look very familiar here. We're going to have some deja vu. We'll just take the weapon, put it off to the side. First thing you want to do, it's kind of annoying actually, because it's a lot of the same steps, but you have to activate a few of them in different order, like half transform them to actually get things out of the way. Like, you have to take the back bit and it'll hinge up like this, and it's going to hinge over this, but you can't quite do that until the arms are out of the way, but you can't move the arms until they're untabbed from here. So you have to do that like halfway, then untab the arms like this, and they will kind of double hinge down. Really important to note, and this tripped me up when I was going back to vehicle mode for the first time. His fists do have to stay out for vehicle mode. If you have them in, then this will just like not tab into place because the fist itself is pushing on the foot here. So I was like, how is that slot so tight? And it was because you're supposed to leave the foot out so that it can actually tab into place like that. So don't get tripped up on that. But so you just double hinge the arms out here, and then the legs are very Combiner Wars. You just take the feet here, untab them from the bottom, and then hinge them down on these panels here. They do tab into place pretty securely. And then the legs here we can separate and then double hinge each of these sections down, so they'll become the back of the calves there. To get stuck a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Hinge into place, and then you can just hinge that backpack down the rest of the way. And there we have Hook in his robot mode. And yeah, he looks pretty good. Definitely looks like Hook. Very similar to the Combiner Wars version, but he's got some nice proportional updates here. Like, having proper elbows out of the get-go rather than, having the 2 sets of elbows that the Unite Warriors has, or the 1 set of really weird wonky elbows that the Combiner Wars one has. And yeah, one big update about him is that the crane is actually a little bit shorter. I mean, if you want to use it as a third leg, you can extend this bit, but because it's shorter, that means he actually has to be able to stand, with his own like heels rather than just using the crane as a third leg like the Combiner Wars version. So that's nice. But yeah, in terms of articulation, the head is on a ball joint, so, rotate around, gets a little bit of wiggle. These bits actually aren't hinges, so you can fold them up to get them out of the way, which is kind of nice. Then the shoulders are on swivels here and can hinge out to the side. He's got a bicep swivel, a double jointed elbow that's about that much bend. The wrist can only bend in for transformation. Also, one thing I noticed about the arms, which I hate when they do this, is like they've given him like half wheels sculpted onto the arms so that it's like the wheels look a little thicker, except they're green. So like, what's the point? It's if those were like painted black to be kind of, faux extra, like wheels to make these thicker, I guess, but I don't know. I would have preferred they just left that detail off altogether rather than like divide the wheel in half unnecessarily. Because, yeah, these wheels are a little thin, but they're fine. Like, I don't understand why we have to like add fake wheels when it's completely unnecessary, but whatever. Nothing at the waist because of how all this folds out. This has been the running thing with all these guys, is none of them have a waist swivel. Hips can go forward and back and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel. Only about that much bend at the knee, which is kind of crummy. Like I feel like they, could have gotten a little bit more out of there just by sculpting this thigh piece a little bit differently, but whatever. The feet can tilt out to the side like that, and they get a little bit of forward tilt, but no real backward tilt, because then the heel just kind of bumps into the back there, and that's what keeps them actually standing. So, decent articulation, nothing really to write home about, but it works well enough. Obviously, we can give him his gun here. You can hold that. If you want to store it, you could just peg it back onto the crane. And then speaking of the crane, because it is on this, peg and port here, if you wanted to, you could have him like hold this, although it doesn't really fit into his hand. You can you even peg it into his arms? I guess on this arm specifically, you could peg it in, which, if you want to do that, but it doesn't really fit into his hands. But yeah. So, that's kind of a neat feature, I guess. But yeah, he looks good. There's nothing, I mean, he's definitely just does feel like a, somewhat more filled out, downscaled version of the Combiner Wars guy. Like a better overall figure, but a little bit smaller than I'd like him to be. So he does feel more polished, but it's very similar to what the Combiner Wars one was like in terms of comparisons in this mode. Here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see, he is Voyager-ish height. He does kind of feel like between Voyager and Deluxe here. Like if we bring on, Siege Megatron, like, yeah, he's not really quite stacking up to Voyager height there. Like, I get it, they want him to be shorter than Megatron, but this comparison's not going to be relevant for much longer anyway, because, the Studio Series Megatron is going to be coming out pretty soon. That figure is just over the horizon, and that figure is a bit bigger. So I feel like, again, scaling properly, these guys could have been a bit bigger as well. It sort of feels like they're planned to fit with the Siege version, but the Siege version is going to be obsolete by the time that the full set comes out anyway. It's a little strange, but either way, that's kind of how he stacks up between Deluxe and Voyager there. Again, I would have preferred if these guys were just like solidly all Voyager height. That would make the most sense to me, kind of how it was with the Combiner Wars version. Here he is again with Combiner Wars Hook, or well, Unite Warriors technically, but so you can see really how much shorter he is there. And like, yeah, people didn't like that these guys were a little bit bigger than like most of our Megatrons around the time, but again, I feel like they'll fit in pretty well with the Studio Series version, and this guy seems a little bit small by comparison. I prefer the Constructicons as all Voyagers rather than all Deluxe kind of size, but that's what the two of them look like together. And then here he is again with the other Studio Series 86 Constructicons that we've gotten so far, and his box mate here, Long Haul. So you can see what they look like together. Again, they're scaling all well together. These two are a bit bigger than the first two that we got. And I'm assuming that Mixmaster and Scavenger are going to be about more this height. I mean, Mixmaster is probably going to be a little bit taller, more around Hook height. If previous versions are to be like trusted, but yeah, they all look pretty good together. Again, it's just my main complaint with the set is I wish they were all just a little bit bigger, but other than that, they're great. But I know that's mostly a me thing, because like a lot of people wanted these guys to be smaller, which is kind of funny because like from Hasbro's perspective, they released this huge Devastator and then people were buying downsized knockoffs of it. And now probably they're going to release this Devastator and some people will be buying upsized knockoffs of it. Because like you just can't win, I guess, Some people want some things, some people want other things. That's fine. Anyway, that's what they all look like together. Hook is a fun figure. Again, Long Haul has a bit more conversation to have with him because he's actually a bit different than the Combiner Wars version, whereas Hook just does feel like like I said, more polished version of that figure that's a little bit smaller. So take it or leave it. He's definitely got less detail here, which, you can call it cheaping out or you can call it cartoon accuracy. I don't know. But either way, to get to combined mode, I guess I'll show that off real quick. I don't want to show all the like combination stuff until we actually have all 6 of them, but I'll show how he gets to his individual combined mode again to just kind of highlight how similar it is to the Combiner Wars version as well. But basically what you want to do here is you want to take the entire backpack section and kind of bring it back up how it was for vehicle mode, and then the crane itself, rather than being on a slider like the Combiner Wars version was, is on a double hinge, which is kind of separates and moves back a little bit there. The arms, this is where you want to fold in the hands here for this mode. And then this one here, again, very similar to the Combiner Wars version, you want to fold down the elbow just on this side so that it has the clearance there for it gets kind of in the way, honestly, but has the clearance for the hinge to fold around. And then this one, you just want to fold up how it was for vehicle mode, pretty much. And then you can kind of peg that back into place there. Take the entire section here. It will, again, split down the middle just like this. What's worth noting is you have to kind of bring it up a little bit, because where this tabs into place is actually a tab facing this direction, with the I guess the top of Devastator's head tabbing into the back of this panel here. So you have to, or, vice versa. This panel here tabs into his head. So you have to kind of like unlock that by pulling it down rather than just yanking it. That can rotate around, and then this section rotates around, and there's like this double hinge setup where this can kind of extend out a little bit, which again is a little bit different from the Combiner Wars version. And then you can bring that around, and then with this bit here, you just pretty much transform the legs back into their vehicle mode configuration. Again, very similar to how the Combiner Wars version did it. And just tab that all back into place. And then you can bring this around, tab that section in like that. And then the head here will actually rotate up, and then this slot here will go into that tab there, and this slot here will go into that tab there to lock the whole thing in place. It can be kind of hard to get it on there. And you rotate around the head, and this is always really funny to me how his face is like sunken in, but you open up the head here, and then you can extend out the face and then close it back up so that, he just had that a bit more compressed for vehicle mode, which is kind of nice. And then you're already seeing it happen here. Again, very similar to the Combiner Wars version. One of the connections opens up here, and then the other one, you open up the canopy and rotate it out like that. And then he's got, again, very similar to the Combiner Wars version, one on the chest that you rotate down. He's just missing that, one central peg in the middle there. And then basically he's going to plug on to Long Haul with this slot here and this tab here. Again, very similar. And then Long Haul's arms will eventually tab in here and there on the chest, I think. Yeah. So, yeah, good Devastator torso so far, but I'm not going to show off the full thing until we have the full set of guys here. But yeah, like I said, very similar to the Combiner Wars version, but he is a fun toy, all things considered. Again, I like the Combiner Wars version, so being similar to that version is not a problem. It's just, I like a lot of things better about this guy, and I like a lot of things better about the Combiner Wars version, mainly the just size of all of them, honestly. Like, I think that, of the ones we've gotten so far, this one has the most obvious, improvements from the Combiner Wars version, like rather than Scrapper and Bone Crusher, who it felt like a little bit more of a lateral move. Even though this guy feels very similar to his Combiner Wars version, it definitely does feel like there's not really, apart from size, there's not really much about that figure that's better than this guy. Like, he pretty much does everything better. Unless you like the scale better of the Combiner Wars version. But other than that, here, we'll just put him back in vehicle mode. Can't be bothered to go all the way back to robot mode. Other than that, he is very similar, but just not, what am I trying to say? Scrapper and Bone Crusher definitely had, a few things about them. It was like, oh yeah, some things are better about the Combiner Wars version, some things are better about these guys, whereas this guy is just like, oh, this one is definitely better than the Combiner Wars version, but it is also, very, very similar, so it's not a huge difference. But anyway, that's enough rambling out of me. Thank you for watching this far in the video. If you got through all of my my rambling, if you enjoy my videos, I do reviews every Tuesday and Thursday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Studio Series 86 Hook.